Welcome to Dog Day afternoon. It's Friday, June 17th. We got the two-step and Quan here. It's a great day to make bets. I am Gilles Gallant with FTNBets on a show powered by the FTN Network, and I'm joined as always by, I was going to call him producer extraordinaire, but dance move extraordinaire, Quan Young. Quan, big movement here because something I don't think people have realized for anybody who's been watching the show. Warriors won the title, and it's the first year of you being a fan of the Warriors. Fourth championship in 8 years. So again, you're maybe a little late to the bandwagon, but you got on there and they won.
Still there.
So still there, but they won. And the reason why this is important, this is on top of your Rams, the first year fandom of the Rams, also winning the Super Bowl. So now that's two teams in a calendar year that you become a fan of that have gone on to win the championship. So my question to you now is, who's winning the World Series? Because teams you become a fan of start to win. I don't know if this is a California angle. Maybe we should be looking at the Padres. Maybe we should be looking at the Dodgers. Quan, please tell the fans at home so we can start putting in our futures bets. Who is winning the World Series right now?
Look, I like where you went with that. First of all, Joe, lifelong Golden State Warriors fan.
Right.
Like before, like way back when Will played and everything. Lifelong LA Rams fan. Go greatest show on turf. Right now, I'm weighing my baseball fandom options. I'm looking. I've been to an Angels game. This is during the 12-game losing streak, so I'm kind of off on them right now. They were playing Nickelback to get the win last week when they get their first win. So, everybody wants to be a big rock star. I'm all about that. I'm not sold on the Dodgers yet. I'm thinking Braves repeat. I kind of flocked to a couple. I've been watching a couple Braves game, and we who do we have on Wednesday that said the Yankees? Joe Osborne said the Yankees are going to fumble in the playoffs. So I'm going to stay away from them. So we got time to decide. But lifelong Rams fan, lifelong Dubs fan. We're going to find out who I've been a lifelong baseball fan of coming up soon.
Braves would be right up your alley, man. They've won 14 in a row. They're off today. You're looking at the schedule coming up. It's okay, but it's not too difficult. It looks like they put the tougher part of the schedule behind them. That being said, I mean, you could probably look at the Padres too, man. Their pitching has been great. They're out of California. They haven't won yet. But again, I think based on kind of what your expertise are, is we like to find teams that are, I don't want to call them top shelf, like front runner type of team, but also at the same time a team that is has at least a great chance.
A winning pedigree,
yeah. Like you can't be saying like, "Oh, I'm all about the Angels." Like it's like, okay, bro, like like they haven't made the playoffs in how long? Like, come on, So with that, I think you're going to end up leaning towards the Dodgers or Padres pick on this. I think by next week you'll probably have a better answer for us. But please keep us posted because we cannot lose. With this recent trend of you picking a team right now. I think that's the hottest bet in sports right now. So, all right, now we've got a big show coming up. We've got an awesome guest today. Greg Peterson from VSiN is coming on the second half of the show. We're going to talk Major League Baseball, the state of baseball betting as we head into the summer, some picks that he likes tonight. And, he's a fantastic guest. This is the second time he's been on the show. I've been on his show a lot too, and always does great work over with VSiN. So now, Quan, before we get started with my picks, they're going to be baseball picks tonight. All my picks today are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. And if Caesars is available in your state and you haven't signed up yet, now is the perfect time because you can use the code FTNBets15 or FTNBets15. It's the code on the screen. When you sign up with Caesars Sportsbook and you use that code, they'll give you a $1,500 free bet just for signing up. And making sure that you have the best lines and the best odds is one of the best ways to ensure long-term profitability. So if you only have one sports book, you should try to get a few under your bank there just to ensure that you can make sure to grab the best odds possible. And for myself, consistently, Caesars has been my go-to for finding the best plus money option. So sign up today with Caesars Sportsbook. All right, Quan, we're going to kick off the show with some home run picks. It's been a little bit of a while here. And of course, we've got the Blue Jays shirt on, so you know that you're probably knowing where this is going. The Jays host the Yankees tonight, man. Big matchup. AL East, the Yankees lead them by like 9 games right now in the AL East. But they host the Yankees tonight, the Jays, so we had to lock in some home run props. And we're going to go with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at plus 500 and Bo Bichette at plus 575. By the way, I love that photo. kudos to George, one of our producers and graphics guys, for finding that one. It's awesome. So why I'm betting on these two guys to hit home runs tonight. So Vlad has 16 home runs this year, maybe not as on his pace of where he's been in last season, but only 4 home runs against left-handed pitching, Quan. But I really like my chances because when you look at that, it's actually in 32 at-bats versus left-handed pitching. He's hitting .341 versus lefties this year, a 1.16 OPS, facing Jordan Montgomery from the Yankees. And when he faced Jordan Montgomery, for what it's worth, he's faced him 9 times, 4 hits and a home run in that span. So again, like my chances against Jordan Montgomery. And I feel like as well, the odds, we're getting him at plus 500. I think it's worth grabbing, just considering that when he's usually at home, and whether it be like a lower end starter, he's typically around the plus 275 to plus 300 mark. So I feel like we're getting decent value here at plus 500. As for Bichette, he struggled versus left-handed pitching this season, but his power numbers pick up when he's playing at home. He's got 10 home runs this year, but 7 of them are at Rogers Center, and he's still hitting in the heart of the order. And in 11 at-bats versus Montgomery, again, for what it's worth, he's got 2 home runs against him. So both of these guys have really actually been able to get some power against this type of pitcher. As well, another reason why I wanted to take both Bichette and Guerrero is the other two in the heart of the order, both George Springer and Teoscar Hernandez, are both under plus 400. They're actually at around plus 325 to plus 350, depending on the sports book. So for me, you're giving me my opinion is the 2 better power hitters at better odds. I'm going to bank on these Jays to take us home. So give me Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero to hit a home run tonight against Jordan Montgomery and the Yankees.
So I got a question for you, Gilles. When you look at home run props, do you also kind of correlate it with total bases, that prop?
Absolutely, I do. And also just the total itself. So right now the total for this game is sitting at 9.5. So they're expecting some runs. Part of that is because of the Yankees offense, which has just been crazy right now this year. Like right now, like you wanted to bet on an Aaron Judge home run tonight, it's plus 185. He does lead the majors in homers, but man, like plus 180, anything below plus 200.
Really low, yeah.
Just the occurrences and just how often it happens, it's just not worth it from an odds standpoint. But what's that telling me is that, okay, if the Yankees are going to put up runs, the Jays are going to need to put up runs if they want a chance to win. Right now, the actual odds for the winning the game, they're both sitting around minus 110. So they're expecting this probably to be a closer game. Both team totals around 4.5, 5.5. So they're expecting runs in this game. I just find it kind of odd that they would put Vladdy and Bo, Vladdy specifically, over 500, plus 500, because generally at home, he's around the plus 300 to plus 350 average. And then when it's a worse starter, maybe not a lefty, for example, it's probably around like plus 275. That's usually the low end of what you would get for a home run prop for Vladdy. When you're giving me a plus 500, again, I'm sure there's people who watching this would be like, man, that's a sucker bet. Okay, well, I'm still going to take a guy who's one of the best power hitters in baseball at home against a guy that he's actually done fairly well against in his career, even though, again, it is a very, very small sample size.
Gotcha.
All right, now we're going to move on to the beta pick. This is one of my favorite players in baseball, and I honestly thought that the Blue Jays were going to get him. I'm going to trade for him in the offseason, but he ended up re-signing a much larger contract with Cleveland. So we are taking Jose Ramirez over 1.5 total bases at plus 125. Now, Ramirez, I'm not going to try to gush too hard, but again, he has been very clutch with the total bases props, especially in the month of June. This month, he's hit this prop in 10 of 14 games, 9 doubles, 3 home runs. One of the best parts, too, is those don't really overlap, those extra base hits. If he's hitting a double, he's not really hitting a home run. So that helps to space it out when you're looking at just overall metrics. And he's been breaking on the road, man. Like 23 extra base hits this year in away games compared to 13 in home games. Going to be facing Clayton Kershaw, your boy with the Dodgers. He's pitching, but to be honest, man, I don't really think Clayshaw is much of an issue because he hasn't thrown more than 90 pitches in a start this season. Again, he's making his second start coming off of injury. I don't expect him to go through this order more than twice. And the Dodgers bullpen ranking 23rd in batting average in June, giving up a few more doubles than they were in previous months. Nothing crazy, but I just don't think Ramirez is going to be kept quiet in this matchup. So give me the over 1.5 total bases at plus 125 for Cleveland against the Dodgers.
Did you say it was more of a fade of Kershaw just because he has to pitch so much?
Part of it is just I think when you look at these odds, you would think, okay, well, Kershaw is pretty good. His just bare stats like the ERA and WHIP, you would be like, okay, those are pretty good. But he's not going long. And like he's probably facing an average of right now like 17 to 18 batters per game. Mm-hmm. And just his pitch counts around like 90. Like it's just not really happening for him where he is expected to go 7-8 innings deep. Once you get into those territories with a guy like that, especially a very sharp pitcher like Clay, then you get a little bit worried of whether or not, a guy like Jose Ramirez could get to him. But once we start getting into the bullpen aspect and whatever else, like I like Jose's chances to be able to get there, right? So, and also just the fact of how well he's played on the road, how well that, the overall, I wanted to call them the Indians, my apologies, Guardians offense has been playing. I just like this spot, especially where he's hitting. So, yeah, Jose Ramirez, again, getting it at plus money, especially with the way that he's been hitting in June. I don't think it should be plus odds in this spot. It should probably be closer to like even odds. So I feel like we're getting a little bit of value at the plus 125. Now, we're going to take the alpha pick here, taking a side again, Quan, and what I think is a really inflated total. We're going to Coors Field, and we're taking Padres Rockies under 12.5 at minus 105. Now, for anybody who bets baseball regularly, Coors Field is always known for having double-digit totals. But I just still think at 12.5, this is a little bit too high because when you look at the season, there's been 5 games this year where the Rockies have had a total of 12.5 for a home game. And in those games, the under is hit in 3 of them. The over only hit by 1 in 1 game, and the other just saw 17 runs. It was just a complete slobber knocker. But again, you're looking at where the trend is as the totals seem to rise. That's when it seems like the offenses just aren't coming up here. And then also Kyle Freeland, I'm not going to put him in even try to use the A word and say that he's an ace or anything like that. But he hasn't been terrible this season at home. Like in 7 starts at home, only 1 game has gone over 12 runs. Combined score. The average combined score in all of his home starts is 10.1. And part of the reason why it's inflated is because one of his starts when he played Kansas City, that game combined for 24 runs. So if you actually look at the variance here and actually measure it, it should probably be closer to an average combined score of around 9.6 or about a 9.4 based on the projections. So again, that's kind of what I'm looking at. And then of course, Mackenzie Gore, he's starting for the Padres. And he's been awesome on the road in 5 games, 25 innings, a 1.05 ERA, a 1.1 WHIP. Both bullpens, they've been above average this month too, like in June. Only 5 combined home runs by both bullpens. ERAs under 4. For me, man, like I just look at this total. I'm thinking like anytime you give me a total over 12 for a Rockies game at home, I'm going to be looking at the under. And I think by the end of the year, if you just blindly took under 12, like whenever it was that, you would end up being with profit. I've written about this many times at previous stops and betting experiences of year over year where these totals at Coors Field just get so inflated that you almost have to blindly take the under because it's just at a point where they need to adjust back to maybe like a 10.5, maybe an 11. So for me, I like under 12.5, Padres Rockies at minus 105.
I'm going. I don't want to say I'm going to follow that trend, but 12, like, yeah, I get Coors Field, balls fly out, all that good stuff. But yeah, I definitely want to make sure I pay attention to that later in the season. I'm not really like following it, but I know Coors Field, Denver, high altitude, blah blah blah. I got you.
Well, and it's always been this way. Like anybody who bets baseball, like that Coors Field, you're always going to see a double-digit total. And not all double-digit totals are created equal just because, again, I wouldn't recommend taking like the under 12 every time that you see it. I'm just projecting that by the end of the season, that's more than likely going to be an under on that. So, oh, wow. So it's at 13 now. Okay, well, again, I still like it at 12.5, but under 13, if you're sitting there, just take it. All right, so those are my 3 best bets. We're taking the under 12.5 between the Rockies and Padres. We've got Jose Ramirez having the over 1.5 total bases at plus 125. And then, of course, we got my Blue Jays home run props. We've got Bo Bichette and Vladdy, both of them over plus 500. So we'll see how that goes tonight. Now we're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring on my man, Greg Peterson from VSiN. We're going to talk about baseball betting and just what to approach as we head into the summer. Stay tuned. Dog Day Afternoon coming back 1 minute. Welcome back to Dog Day Afternoon. I'm joined now by one of the best baseball handicappers out there, someone who seems to work 25 hours a day, if that's possible. Feels, I guess sleep is optional in this case, but it's Greg Peterson with VSiN. Greg, welcome to the show.
Gilles, always great to be on with you, and yes, we will sleep when we are dead. It does not matter if it's college basketball, if it's baseball, if it's NFL. Always excited to be on with you, my friend. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And for people who don't know, he hosts 2 daily betting podcasts, both for baseball, Major League Baseball, and college hoops, along with his gig hosting the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN. Again, the hardest worker I could think of. Whenever you're thinking about if you're doing enough, just look at him and you can measure yourself on that front. Now, Greg, I wanted to talk to you about just kind of the state of baseball betting, because somebody like a lot of the time when basketball ends, you see this big influx of people moving over to the Major League Baseball space, and some people are new, some people are more casual, some people that's what they do, and they're very seasoned on what in that process. But for you, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, with these new bettors coming into the space, legalization opening up in many states compared to last season. If you had to sum up a way for bettors to get up to speed, and what would some of the resources that you would tell new bettors to look at, like for handicapping baseball, like certain sites to look at, factors to consider? And I just, obviously it's a very broad question, but I'm just thinking like of the people who are casual, who maybe don't bet baseball very often and are interested. What are some of the tips that you would give them from that standpoint?
One thing that I think is so important when it comes to handicapping Major League Baseball, instead of taking a look at the raw numbers, like the ERA, the wins and losses, which I think that many people now know by now that wins and losses, that it's become a little bit more of a dormant stat when it comes to starting pitchers. Look at how they do on a per 9 innings basis, which instead of, guy X has 50 strikeouts this year. How many strikeouts per 9 innings does he have? If it's 7 strikeouts per 9 innings, all right, that's fine, but it certainly isn't as good as if you'd have 9, 10, in some cases 11 strikeouts per 9 innings. So I think taking a look at things on a per 9 innings rate is very important. And also taking a look at home and road splits, because you just mentioned it with a few of your bets as well, especially out there in Coors Field. The Colorado Rockies are certainly going to put up more offense when they're at Coors Field rather than when they're at the road. They're at elevation. They actually put up more than 3 runs per game more at home than they do on the road. So you have to adjust your handicap so much when you wind up getting some of these home and road ballparks. And there are a lot of places that do that. If you actually just go to ESPN.com, they've got a splits page. They've got you guys covered there. Baseball Reference does a good job. Fangraphs is someplace I look to. And if you're looking to project forward for starting pitchers in future days, Fangraphs does a good job of being able to project forward with regards to their starters as well, even when a team is a little bit TBD. Sometimes it doesn't wind up coming to fruition, but at the very least, you're able to get an idea of how the pitcher rotation is most likely going to look for the team. So those are 3 resources that I really utilize. And those are a few things I think are very key to take a look at, because not all of our ballparks are created equal. And unlike where it's in college basketball, the court length is the exact same. The distance to be able to get it out in a Major League Baseball ballpark, it's going to vary from Yankee Stadium to Rogers Center.
Yeah, this is true. And that was the one thing I was going to say is getting to know ballparks, I thought is a very easy way, but also at the same time, it takes some time just to get accustomed to kind of what you're used to seeing. Coors Field being a perfect example where you won't see a total under 10 pretty much the entire year. Whereas, you go to Petco, for example, or a pitcher-friendly park, you could see a lot of the totals gravitate more towards 7.5, maybe an 8, depending on who's pitching, obviously. Let's talk about some of these big teams right now. Some of the teams, again, talking about the public, the Yankees, very public team, and pretty big difference between last season and how they're performing this season. Like right now, obviously, they're a buzzsaw. 33 of their 47 wins are by 2 runs or more, 131 run differential. They've only been underdogs 4 times this year, and they're, let me double check. Yeah, 3-1 in that spot. We always knew offense wasn't really the issue for Yankees. They're always in the top 5 for power numbers, but it was always seemed to be starting pitching. And I'm wondering, is it just that simple? Because the collective ERA of the starting pitchers this year so far is 2.75 for the Yankees, whereas compared to last year, it was just around 4. And I'm wondering from your standpoint of when you're capping games and you're looking at Yankees games day to day, do you think it's just something as simple as the starting pitching is performing better, or is there other factors that we're not considering?
There are a few other factors as well. They've got a closer by the name of Clay Holmes right now that I'm not even kidding when I say this. He's got a 0.29 ERA. That's not a 2.90. That is a 0.29 ERA. He has been nothing short of spectacular for a Yankees team that they're currently number 2 in bullpen ERA. The bullpen as a whole, 21-10 thus far this year. This is with Chad Green, now out due to Tommy John surgery for the rest of the year. Jonathan Loaizaga, someone that was trustworthy for them last season. He has been out full time when he's been out there. He's quite frankly not been good. And Aroldis Chapman has been dealing with a little bit of an Achilles injury. So the Yankees have been able to have that. And then I'm sure that many people have heard of what Nestor Cortez has been able to do this season. That gives them a very viable option. And it felt like Garrett Cole was losing some of his abilities due to the lack of sticky stuff towards the end of last season. He has come back and he has looked significantly better over, I would call it his last 6-7-ish starts. He's really been able to come on strong when you wind up being able to trot out there a guy like Jameson Taillon, the guy that we're going to be seeing this weekend in Jordan Montgomery. These have all been very trustworthy guys for the Yankees. You just take a look on any given night and you really don't have an untrustworthy starter for the New York Yankees. And then you've got the combination of Aaron Judge and Anthony Rizzo. They've currently got a combined 41 home runs. To put this into perspective, the Tigers have as a team have 31. Those two guys have 10 more home runs than the Tigers as a collective. So you know what? It's a wide variety of things, and things are going very well for the Yankees who have the best record out there in the big leagues.
Well, and I just find it's incredible to see the year over year, right? Because they won 92 games last year. And of course, Garrett Cole, we all saw his publicized, I don't want to call it a downfall, but just maybe like a regression, slightly in the start of near the tail end of last year. And then of course it seemed like it was almost carrying over to the start of this year. And then now it seems like he's been able to find his footing and be a little bit more comfortable. And even a guy like Luis Severino, for example, just another starter who we didn't even discuss, but is coming into his own again. Like, a few years ago, you would think that he was going to be, a fixture in that rotation, off the field stuff aside. Just the fact that, he's been able to kind of come back and even just provide a little bit of something for them. It just feels like almost like a night and day approach when you look at the Yankees now, as opposed to the way that we were capping them last year. But the one thing I was going to ask you too, Greg, is we're going to flip over to the National League now. The team that won the World Series last year, the Atlanta Braves, terrible start to the year by their standards. Through the first 50 games, they were 23-27, but they've since knocked off 14 straight wins. They haven't lost in June, and that's probably been the most public point that you could see that's made, whatever publication that you're seeing, like they haven't lost in June. So as a result, that kind of trickles into the bettors' mindset, I find, when they're kind of trying to cap these games. And I wanted to ask you from your perspective, when teams are on a double-digit win streak like this, and these happen all the time in Major League Baseball because, again, how many games there are, teams get hot, teams get cold, books tend to adjust the lines based on that, I feel like. And then almost also the betting public, they start to funnel money into them maybe a little bit more. And I wanted to know from your POV, when you're capping Braves games now, and at least go, do you still take it on a game-by-game basis of like, okay, here's the matchup, here's how they've been performing, or do you factor in stuff like momentum, in trying to handicap a Braves game?
I still take a game-by-game perspective. I will shade up a team a little bit more or shade down a team in the case of like the LA Angels and what we wound up seeing with that for a long winning streak or a long losing streak, because there are just some times in which it's no good, very bad, and terrible for these teams, like with the LA Angels losing 14 straight games. That's a team that was fading quite a bit during that losing streak because it's like, boy, this doesn't look very good. And for the Atlanta Braves, you do factor in the fact that this team has been playing completely differently recently, because with the Atlanta Braves, you take a look at what they've been able to do in terms of their offense. They are currently on pace to be able to hit 60 home runs this month. They'd be the second team in Major League history to be able to do so. And I mean, momentum is as good as your next day starter, as I always like to say. So you always want to be basing like Charlie Morton, for instance, a little bit differently than Kyle Wright, who's going to be on the mound tomorrow. Kyle Wright, he gets a little bit more credence because Charlie Morton has given up 3+ runs in each out of his last 5 starts and 8 out of his last 10. So you don't want to be just blindly backing a streak or blindly fading a streak, but you still want to be taking that into perspective, because there are some teams that feels like everything winds up going right for them. They just come out with a little bit more of a jovial attitude. And then when you also wind up getting a gift like the Atlanta Braves do in a Cubs team that has been throwing out their Frank Schwindel position player in 2 out of their last 7 games, that winds up helping out as well. So it is a case in which you've got to be taking a look at these streaks. I think that you want to be putting it into context. You also don't want to be making too much out of it as well. Like, say that you'd make the Braves a minus, we're going to throw out their minus 160 today against the Chicago Cubs, moving them up to maybe like a minus 165, minus 170. That's fair. Don't wind up putting them at like, oh, now they're minus $2 or anything like that. So sort of rein it in, have a little bit of a measured approach.
And I think, too, it's important. And again, every time you can win 14 games in a row, it's still valid. But I think as well, it's important to look at who they were facing in those matchups, too. And I find in that 14-game streak, they're playing a lot of teams that are probably below 500, teams that, it's obviously it's hard to win 14 games in a row just because of a 162-game season. But I feel like some of those wins, I don't want to call them hollow, but I would just say that they're not as equal as if they went on a 14-game streak, which involved, 3 games against the Mets, 3 games against the Cardinals, 3 games against, the Dodgers. Or, for example, like if they were winning 14 games and they included all those teams, I feel like maybe we'd have to really more take a look at what we're seeing as opposed to project that, as opposed to when they're, beating up on the crappier teams and then having to play a tougher teams like they're going to see in the next couple of weeks because their schedule is going to get a little bit tougher. But you wrote about something today, and I was hoping you could highlight this. It was highlighting your team, the Brewers. And I know you like to handicap every side in total. And I know that obviously I'm not going to ask you what's your favorite pick tonight, because I loathe that question too. People ask me what's my favorite bet. It's like asking me like they're like my kids. They're all my favorites in a way. But there's a game tonight that you wrote about for DK Live featuring the Brewers and the Reds. And I'm hoping that you could tell us a little bit more about what side you took and why, and what kind of factors you were looking at and what came to that conclusion.
We wrote about the Milwaukee Brewers on the money line in this one, which pretty much every book I'm seeing as of right now pick them, or at the very least what I came on about 15 or so minutes ago. So you're finding them between about a minus 105 to a minus 110-ish, depending upon your book. And with the Brewers, this is just a very stark differential with regards to what we wound up seeing just a month ago when these two teams wound up playing. It was Hunter Green versus Freddie Peralta. Game was in Cincinnati. Obviously, Freddie Peralta, typically you'll put him with a little bit more credence than the starter tonight in Eric Lauer. But when the Reds and the Brewers wound up playing on May 10th, Hunter Green was facing off against the Brewers, and the Brewers were minus 200 in that game, and now it's a pick'em. That is just a very, very stark differential, and I think that it's very much overreactionary because the Brewers, they have been on a little bit of a slide. I believe that it's now 9 out of their last 11 that they've wound up losing, but Eric Lauer is still a good starter. He's getting 9.8 strikeouts per 9 innings. He's given up 3 runs or fewer in now 24 out of his last 27 starts. So he's been solid. And Hunter Green, I mean, to his credit, last 2 starts, he's given up 1 run in 12 innings. He's been able to figure it out a little bit more. This is still a guy that's giving up more than 2 home runs per 9 innings. He's still giving up more than 4 walks per 9 innings. Overall for the year, has a 5 ERA. Does a good job of being able to get swings and misses, but it certainly has not necessarily been going well for him. And this is also Reds bullpen that they've got an ERA north of 5, and there's only one bullpen in the big leagues that currently has an ERA north of 5, and that would be the Cincinnati Reds. Josh Hader, he is most likely not going to be available for this game. He's currently on paternity leave, but you still have Devin Williams, who I trust in him a whole heck of a lot more than the Cincinnati Reds, anyone out there in that bullpen. So being able to get the Brewers at minus 110 against a Cincinnati Reds team where they were minus 200 in this very similar spot a month ago, I think that is very good value. So I want to brighten up the Milwaukee Brewers. Seems like one of those things where it's like, oh, that just seems very, very easy. But when you take a look at the differential in the line, I think that there's just tremendous value here.
Oh, I think for me, the layup was like, okay, he's a Brewers fan. Clearly he's taking the Brewers, but it's not obviously that simple because of the explanation, because of, looking at these starting pitching factors and just looking at the odds comparison. Odds comparison for me is huge when you're looking at just previous scenarios and just looking at what you're looking at from a value standpoint, game to game. So the fact that you're able to get them at essentially a pick 'em, maybe you might see it at minus 115 by first pitch. I doubt it, but the fact that you're getting a fairly decent value as opposed to when you were getting them like a month ago at minus 200 when the Reds were just completely on a downward swing, I think you're getting pretty decent value here. So kudos to that. Now, Greg, that's all for today. 3 picks from me and a wealth of info from you. Before we go, can you tell the folks who are watching more about your daily shows, where we can find your content, and what we can expect from you for the rest of the summer?
Yes, sir. The hub for everything is Twitter at @GUnit_81. And we've got you guys covered with regards to those 2 podcasts that you mentioned, Coast to Coast Hoops and the Baseball Betting Show, which is a part of the VSiN Bets feed. You're able to find that wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, list goes on and on. And then also on my Twitter feed, I post up my handicap for every single game, every single day when it comes to Major League Baseball, listed up in rotation order. And I try to get up my spreadsheets for the next day as well. Like today is Friday. I've already got my handicap for Saturday's games up as well. Obviously, we'll see a little bit of movement with that when you wind up having starting pitchers that wind up getting scratched, because it always winds up happening. Teams wind up moving their rotations a little bit, but I always try to project forward so that way people can pound some openers, because I always think that that's very important when it comes to baseball as well. And then when it comes to college basketball scene, for those that enjoy it, conference previews are on their way right now. So I've been pounding out a lot of those loaded mid-major conferences. So having a good time doing just a little bit of everything, my friend.
That's fantastic, man. Again, the hardest working man in sports betting. If you ever feel like you're not doing enough, you will really feel like you're not doing enough once you have a conversation with our gentleman here, Greg Peterson. So that's all for today. We'll be back on Wednesday on FTN Network's special NBA draft edition of the show with some bets and analysis. Follow me on Twitter at GDawg5000. As he said as well, follow him as well at GUnit_81. You'll be able to get all of that content that he had just described. Easy access to it. A lot of people use it. You want to check that out. I want to thank everybody for watching Dog Day Afternoon. Bon chance.